What's going on, everybody? Phew. Well, where do I start? Making videos is still a strange thing to me. Even though I know in my mind what I want to talk about, as soon as I start the camera, I'm always like, I can tell by the way I say it, alright, well, hey everybody, it's Carpo, or, like that. It's a little uneasiness about how to proceed. And I think that that's kind of a consistent theme in life for a lot of us. I can only speak for myself, and I try very hard on this channel to only speak for myself, because I understand that every person has their own perspective. And even though we do have echo chambers, and we do live in our certain own manufactured realities that we choose or choose not to adhere to, basically, to keep it simple, we're all just people, okay? And every one of us has a different brain. I would ask, what exactly do we share in our minds? What are the things that we all have? What are the personality traits that we all have that aren't learned behavior? And I'm hard-pressed to come up with very many. The obvious desire to eat, to find food, to seek shelter, these things, Feral children who are brought back into the fold are often, they live like wild animals. So our human traits, our human characteristics, these things are all manufactured. And we utilize our intelligence to compartmentalize our brains to fit into the society we live in. It's amazing to me. We understand that neuroplasticity is basically what happens. It's the term that's used to describe how our brains change when we're into something and interested in something. If get into music, then we will develop parts of our brain that are much more prone to recognize music and hear music and understand music. If a person loses their sight, a different part of their brain, the part that was formerly used for sight, can be reutilized for better hearing. These are facts. We know this. People who often have one sense damaged have enhanced senses because your brain wants to make up for it. The brain's power seems limitless, but we can only use so much at one time because we're conscious. So, honestly, what I'm here to talk about is superstition. And that's a byproduct of the brains that we have. That's a byproduct of living conscious and living aware of ourselves and our mortality. It's mind-numbing how much of us really is learned behavior. So, this is why I toy with the idea. There's not really anything a person can say that will anger me, because I know who I am. But more than that, I know that, and I'm not talking about picking on me in particular, I'm saying that each person has buttons that can be pushed. Whenever I find a button that can be pushed, I work on it and ask myself, what is it about this? So if someone claims, hey, you're too far this way, and I say, no, I'm not, and I know I'm not, then why would I defend it? But if I know it's true, I might overcompensate by saying, no, that's not true. I'm just giving a general psychological trait. And I've learned a little bit about psychology, reading a few books, but I had to actually stop learning these things. The last book I had was called Understanding Yourself, and I don't like the personality type thing, because it categorizes us, and we draw conclusions based on those categories. But what I'm really leading into is the idea that we really created our beliefs in order to cope with the reality of living. Now, I have a hard time finding a real difference between, let's say, if you were to categorize religion and superstition. To me, they would be very similar. And by definition, everybody has their own definitions. This is when it gets into, technicalities and terms and perceptions and definitions. But religion and superstition are both basically believing that there's some underlying structure that shows us something, or that we can understand, that can't be proven. And what inspired me to actually make this video was just when I sat down to make a video, I was thinking, what in particular do I want to talk about? And then the camera had 1,666 pictures left. But the camera is broken, so the lens is the actual part I see right now. I see myself upside down, and so it was 9,991, and I was like, I was really into numbers in the past. I would make videos talking about, well, I'm seeing this particular number, and there was a long time where I saw 1111, and once where I saw, say, 1212, or a lot of 9s or a lot of 7s, and so I would say, there must be something to this. And then I would have people say, call my bluff. In other words, say, hey, you're recognizing them because your brain wants to pick them up and you're seeking patterns. And I said, well, damn it, I want to believe it's something. So I started ascribing numbers a meaning, such as 555 was danger. 666 had to do with knowledge, because I'm not a religious person. And I believe that original 666 was, it's one of the perfect examples of how nobody can come to a conclusion on what things really mean. Some people believe it was the number of the letters in the name of, say, Nero, or a lot of variety of other leaders, that 666 meant that. I've proposed that it's a kind of a joke. It's like our social security number or our credit score was the funny one. But in reality, all of these numbers are very important to us as people. 666 was like King Midas. Was it Midas? No. Sorry, I can't remember the king. 666 talents of gold. It showed up a couple different times in different contexts. And so a person starts asking, what does that mean? But anyhow, getting back to it, I saw it on the screen and I thought, if I was a different person, I may have thought that was a sign not to make a video. Or if I was someone else, I might think that's a sign to make a video and to talk about how Jesus has saved me. And for others, it would be a sign to talk about how the devil is harmful or dangerous to, our well-being. I am so far outside of the realm of discussing religion that I have a hard time remembering that a majority of people are religious. I have no idea to what degree people are religious. I've talked to so many Christians who believe that Jesus is the only way. And after discussing this with dozens of people, I come to the conclusion, in my perspective, from what I've seen, that most people can happily live with their religion and let everyone else live too. But a few people have to push themselves, and if you discuss it and you disagree with them, they will tell you you're going to hell and call you every name in the book. And I've had several people in the last 4 or 5 years on YouTube that have come and just railed on me for weeks, months, or even years, just saying, I just want to see you saved and I want to see you in heaven. And that's a very difficult thing for a person who, from my perspective, in my mind, I say that there is absolutely no way that nature would create a reality where people can be omitted from having a good eternity merely because they don't understand the concepts of a religion. There's so many gray areas and islanders that had never known Jesus, and then they came up with these ideas of, well, there's an age of accountability, and people who don't know any better can be saved. And then the missionaries, I don't like discussing it too much, mainly because I don't want to be a party pooper. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to convince anybody else that what I believe is true, because I don't try to. That's the most important thing. I mean, I don't try to push my views on others, and I expect the same from them. But I do warrant a good discussion. I love it when a person brings something to my attention and says, hey, are you aware of this? This might help you. And I can respectfully say thank you or no thank you. But the whole idea is for all of us to gain knowledge to be happier. But superstition holds us back. I go to Soak every year. It's the regional Burning Man for here. And they call it Soak because it's in the Northwest and it's always been rainy in the past. But they moved it out to Eastern Oregon in a nice little ranch, the Justusin Ranch. And it's usually only about 1,500 people. And it's like a 4-day event where, just like Burning Man, you get together and you burn an effigy for 2 different nights, and everyone just has a great time. It's basically a little city of lights and people and music and DJs, and it's phenomenal. Art installations, all kinds of things, and it just lets people let loose. And this last year, the theme, they have a different theme each year. And it was science last year. And I just loved it because I voted for it right away. And it was like overwhelmingly chosen. And then like a couple days after Soak this year, they sent an email out to everyone saying, we decided after sifting through the ashes of the fire, and kind of made this little kind of joke thing, said, we've decided that the theme for next year at Soak will be Superstition. And I was just elated. I thought, this is the perfect theme and the perfect timing for me, because I can use all kinds of fun little installations. Not just, we're talking about so many different superstitions. The other day, I was driving with my son, and we decided to take a road we usually don't take and go to a road, go to the store. And as we were driving, there's a cemetery on the right. And he said something about, are people buried there? And right then, a black cat runs across the road in front of us. So here's a black cat crossing our path and going into the cemetery. And I just laughed, and I was like explaining to him, yeah, some people believe that black cats are bad luck. But when I was younger, I looked at superstition and I said, wait a minute. People who live believing in superstitions are manifesting their own problems if anything comes of, let's take the mirror. Bad luck for 7 years if you break a mirror. If you truly believe that, then your subconscious may manifest that. It may sound silly, but is it really worth it to take a risk? So I decided that breaking mirrors means nothing. And when it comes to the number 13, this was back when I was like in my 20s, I said, well, I'm going to make 13 my lucky number, or one of my luckiest numbers. And I'm also going to make Friday the 13th a day for great change and movement. And I'm going to make black cats good luck. And every single superstition, I turned around and said, this is going to be a positive thing. And ever since then, for the last 15 or so years, that's how it's been. Everything I see that's supposed to be a bad omen, to me, is a good omen. And so a person who believes in these superstitions might say, well, you're a fool. You're putting yourself in danger. And I say, no, you're putting yourself in danger by believing that shit. Seriously. Manifesting these fears and blows my mind, I guess, that we, as humans, our brains are so capable of manufacturing reality for ourselves. And as much as I know I'm an ignorant human, I know that there's so many people out there who are so much farther intelligent than I am. People who could just school me on science, on politics, on religion, on everything. And I thought, do I want to yearn to be one of those people? Do I want to be somebody who knows everything about one particular thing? And after interacting with a lot of really smart people, I've found that it seems like they're lonely. Now I'm just kind of talking here. I'm not saying that everyone who is super intelligent is lonely, but the smarter you get, the more you know about particular subjects, the less people you have to can really understand what you're saying. And the more technical jargon you start to use to try to prove your point, and you lose people. And I found this from very carefully monitoring how I react to certain posts. Like, if I get into a discussion with someone, or I'm reading through a thread or a comment section on YouTube, and I come across like a 3 or 4 line little paragraph that really says something, I'll thumbs up or comment back. But if it's one of those 20, 30 liners, and I've left it myself, because you get into it, and it starts to use massively technical terms, or a person is obviously using, terminology and ideas that are just too hard for the average mind to put together, it's not that they're not translatable, it's just that they're not human. You know what I'm saying? It's not the way people talk. Technical jargon, it's hard for a lot of people to understand. I'm not going to say that there aren't people who do. I'm just saying that it's easy to lose people when you go too much, when you go too far into something. And I know this all too well, because I make videos here that are 20 minutes long. And I talk about shit, and I know that most people turn them off within the first few minutes. And some people probably skip to the end and just watch the last couple minutes to see what I talk about. Or just want to come in and make a comment and don't even listen. Who knows? Everybody's got their own thing. But I'm aware of that. I'm aware that overthinking things can lead to problems. And when it comes to superstition, oh my God, people get themselves in so much trouble by believing these things. And it's not just, I don't want to get into religion because I've noticed in the last couple of years, my subscribers who have known me for a long time probably have noticed that I don't talk about religion as much as I used to. It has absolutely nothing to do with the fear of persecution or having to defend myself. It has to do with not wanting to deal with angry Christians, but also not wanting to offend anyone. It's really important to me to not see people feeling like what they believe is wrong and that I'm telling them that's wrong. You know what I mean? If you want to be a Christian, you are damn welcome to be a Christian. It's only when it crosses my path and my rights are interfered with by your beliefs, such as believing that God wants things a certain way and then making laws based on that. Or some extreme Christians who say, and I've heard people say this, like, well, God will sort it out. God will figure it out. Don't worry about global warming. Don't worry about overpopulation. Don't worry about what's going on in the world. God knows what he's doing. And I just say, I'm sorry to say, but, that may be true, but we still have some input on this. We are the population that exists. And although we can't prove that God exists, we can prove that we exist, so here we are. We're living in this reality. We're living in a worldwide holocaust of ideals, and everyone has completely different views on where we should go in the future. And some people say, fuck the earth, I'm going to heaven, And I guess that's when it becomes a problem. I think superstitions are often just belief because they're passed down. So let me just propose this idea. If a person is born, back to like feral children, if a person was born into this world and they were given an education in language and then they were sent out into the world without any, and this is just a hypothetical, with no human interaction that had anything to do with beliefs. In other words, if you had no access to actual books about history, about what others believe, if everyone's knowledge was based on just simple, discussions, existence, English, mathematics, those things, would even one person come to the conclusion that there was a man named Jesus who was the one Savior, or that Muhammad really existed, without having books from history to show us this? So I guess what I'm saying is, let's say every Bible was burned tomorrow, from every religion, every belief system, and everyone who knew anything about that religion was wiped out, and we started back over, with only a few thousand people that had never heard of religion, never knew anything about any superstitions, and then we grew a new society. Would those same belief systems arise out of that? Would a God reveal itself in the same ways as it does? And I don't believe it would. I believe that every culture has their own beliefs, and we take off of previous religions' beliefs. And it's just like ISIS. I hate talking about ISIS now because everyone thinks you're talking about a terrorist organization. I'm talking about Isis, the Egyptian goddess. And many of these, Egyptian gods and goddesses that from Greek times, from, ancient Egyptian times, Roman times, all these different cultures had very similar stories about, a guy who was born on the 25th of December to a virgin and, died for 3 days and then was risen again. And all of this correlates perfectly with the sun. And so in the modern day, we've seen things like the movie Zeitgeist and other movies and a variety of books and documentaries which have shown how many of the ancient beliefs have a very similar belief system and how it correlates to the natural processes. And that brings you back to like paganism and earth worship, god and goddess worship as being natural entities. And when I've had discussions with people about that in the in the past, I've said, well, I guess I'm kind of a pantheist, I guess, but I can't define it. I've looked into all the different belief systems. I believe a little bit of Tao, a little bit of Buddhism, a little Hindu, a little bit of this and that, but not the specific gods, because I know they're metaphors, but none of them really resonate 100% because they're not westernized. And that's what religion is. It's cultured to the specific area. It's tailored to a region. And now that the world is bigger, our superstitions are spreading around. Perhaps there was a time when a black cat was bad luck. Let's just throw in this crazy story about how at one time, I guess I couldn't think of one for black cats, but maybe a whole bunch of horrific events happened on the 13th, or Friday the 13th, and after a while they said, oh God, this is a bad date. Actually, I think I did look into the origins of Friday the 13th once. I guess I got to look at that one again. But everything has a root and a root cause, and I believe that a lot of it's bullshit. I believe that a majority of what we hear and see in the world, of what others believe and tell us is true, is bullshit. And it's not their fault, it's not our fault, it's that we as conscious beings have put on these suits and ties and hoodies and tried to go out into the world and make these things with these crazy objects, items, plastic and glass and cannabis and lighters and vape pens. I mean, it's wild to be alive. But we're used to it, so we don't think of it as anything. Imagine somebody from the 1st century coming in and seeing what we have today. It would be like sorcery, And we're manipulating our environment to suit ourselves and to live the best we know how. So it just blows me away, I guess. I guess if anyone believes in a particular superstitions, I would say make sure you've researched it and you know what you're talking about, or you know what you believe. That if you think Friday the 13th is bad luck, I do believe that you can manifest bad luck. And that puts me on, right now, by saying that puts me on that mystical spectrum. That is a superstition I just used. That I believe you can manifest your reality. That's superstition. It's not proven. It's just a suspected thing. There may be means to where we can get a better life, but and put it into our subconscious. But regardless of how it happens, that's what I believe. And I have no evidence of that, and I can't prove it, but I believe it. So we all have beliefs we can't prove, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if somebody confronts your belief and says, it's not true, be ready to say, think what you want. I'm going to believe what I want, and you believe what you want. And if you can't do that, then you're not firmly entrenched in your belief enough. You don't really believe what you're saying you're believing if it affects other people or it affects you because others don't believe it. And so that's my take. Anyway, I'll talk to y'all on the flip side. It's getting kind of... I can't see the camera. Oh, 23 minutes. Damn. All right.